hearts. We have been talking about the book of Galatians for a few weeks, which have been our epistle reading, but today we're going to be returning back to the gospel according to Luke. And it's an incredible story that Deacon read, and Luke is actually the only one that records this story in all of the gospels. It's known as the miracle of Jesus raising a widow's son. It's one of the 3 times Jesus raises the dead back to life during his ministry. We have Jairus' daughter, as recounted in the 3 synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And we have Lazarus, of course, and that's recorded by John in chapter 11. And then Luke tells us this story of the widow's son. You know, before we look at this passage again, I wanted to look at these other rising from the dead passages. Jairus is presented to us as one of the rulers of the synagogue. Very important person, right? Where he comes and prostrates himself before Jesus, begging him to heal his daughter. She's not dead yet. Jesus decides to go to Jairus' house. But we learn that he heals another woman along the way. He didn't seem to be in that big of a hurry, did he? Remember the woman with the issue of blood? That was the healing that took place there. She actually reached out to him. So by the time Jesus arrives at Jairus' house, the girl is dead. But Jesus keeps saying she's just asleep. He doesn't perform the miracle in front of everyone. He actually asks her parents and a few disciples to come in and with him, and then not to say anything. The story is different with Lazarus, the second rising from the dead story. He receives a note that the one he loves, Lazarus, is ill, very ill. And this is a family that's very close to Jesus. He knows Mary, Martha, Lazarus, but he doesn't run or send a word to heal Lazarus. He waits. We learn he waited another 2 days. By the time he goes to them, we are told Lazarus had been buried for 4 days. Jesus knew he was going to perform this miracle for the sake of the family that he loved and the people who stood there. Here in our reading today, the story is very unique. It starts in Luke 7, verses 11 through 17. So soon afterwards, he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a great crowd went with them. So soon after what, you may ask? This is not a small detail. Jesus was actually in Capernaum, which is in the northern part of Galilee, and he had just healed the centurion's servant. Remember that story? He sends a word. He doesn't even go to the house. He just sends a word because the centurion had so much faith in Jesus that he asked him, just say the word and we'll be healed. And he knew Jesus had that much authority. So our reading picks up right after that event and tells that Jesus went to Nain. Now, this town is mentioned only once in the whole Bible. This is it. It's still in Galilee, but it's south of Nazareth. So if you look at a map, you'll see that it's very far from Capernaum where Jesus just was. And he wasn't even alone. It says that his disciples and a great crowd went with him. Some scholars believe they must have traveled through the night in order to get there at this time. So our reading continues. As he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a considerable crowd from the town was with her. So there's something different here about all these other miracles that we just talked about. First, we're not given a name for the man or a name for the widow. Second, Jesus not only brought a crowd with him, but there was a large crowd already there for this funeral. And third, and this is the most amazing, is that's so different, is that nobody invited Jesus to come to this funeral. Jesus just knew where to go. He just shows up. He didn't send a word. He knew he needed to be there and be there at this time. So keep these in mind. We'll come back to them. Verse 13 reads, "And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said, 'Do not weep.'" This might be one of the most tender moments that the scriptures give us. Christianity is always saying how much she loves how present Jesus is with people. He saw them, and he sees us. He knows the cry of our hearts. He knows exactly what we need. He not only travels a great distance to be at this funeral, he gets there and addresses the mother first, the widow. You have to remember that women not only were not considered equal, but they were considered second-class citizens. And for a widow who has lost her only son and is childless now, most likely meant she would be begging on the streets. And Jesus had compassion on her. He comforts her in front of the whole crowd. His love for us, his cross, brings us all as one in him. There's a reason this story is known as the resurrection of the widow's son. He saw her need. He sees our need. So he went to Nain and took away her pain to provide for her. He brings her only son back to life so that he can care for her. He does that in such an incredible way. Let's keep reading. Verse 14 says, "Then he came up and touched the bier," or the structure on which the dead was laid. "And the bearer stood still. And he said, 'Young man, I say to you, arise.' And the dead man sat up and began to speak." Wouldn't you like to know what he said? "And Jesus gave him to his mother." Of all three miracles of bringing the dead to life, this is the one that Jesus decided to touch the dead. In front of this big crowd, he's teaching everyone that instead of becoming unclean for touching the dead, he is the one who has the power to turn the unclean clean. We know that in Jewish culture that you would have to go through cleansing rituals if you were to be in contact with the dead, whether it be a dead animal, a dead person. And yet Jesus is not made unclean. He makes that which is unclean clean. Fear, awe, seized them all. And they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." And this report about him spread through the whole of Judea and all of the surrounding country. So you see how this is so unique? Such a unique story in the scriptures, and so unique from the other stories of Jesus raising someone from the dead. Jesus shows us how present he is to all. It's not about people of important roles like Jairus, who had an important role in the synagogue, nor is it about people who he was close to, like Lazarus. Uninvited, he came. He came for all of us. And he continues to come for all of us today. He comes for you right now, sitting in this newly refinished pew. He is here for you. He knew our need. He touched our dead flesh and gave us life in him. And the people were in awe and worshiped God. So here's what I'd like for you to remember. You may feel like the dead man sometimes. Or you may feel like the widow who's just gone through so much there is no hope. But Jesus is here today. He wants to touch you so you can have his life. And we can go and proclaim this goodness to others, his goodness to others. We may feel like the ones who are always in need of a touch from God, but I believe he wants us to learn that we can be like him. This is part of discipleship. We become like Christ, and then we are the ones going out and touching and bringing life to others. As we walk with him, like the disciples and the crowd who followed him did, we too need to go. They walked overnight probably. Where do we need to go to touch those, to find those in Nain who are in need? We, as his body, are called to serve others in their time of need, to show his love in a way we love others. As we start a new school year, maybe it's just the fresh season of fall. As we go into this new season, I want us to think more of how we can go to those in need in our city, how we can receive God's touch. Then we can go out and see others be touched, given his life, and glorify him. There's one last thing I want to mention. When you look at the meaning of the name of the city, Nain or Nain, it means beauty. I don't think this is by chance. Beauty is where the dead come to life. Let's follow him to Nain. Amen.